Hey everybody, I'm playing my tenor again today and it feels incredible. The past couple of months I have been really focused on different parts of research on the alto saxophone, especially in a pedagogical setting in, let's just call it 21st century academia. There's a majority of the saxophone realm that when you study it in a program, whether it's, at the high school or collegiate level, the majority of literature is built around the alto saxophone. And the majority of saxophone pedagogues throughout history have been alto players primarily. So the tenor is a very special instrument to me because this is where I started my route in my education on this instrument. It was the first instrument, the first saxophone I ever played, so my approach to it is very natural, it's very comfortable, it's what feels right. The saxophone, in my approach to the instrument, should always have this gooseneck in the tenor neck. And studying the alto has brought a lot of different ideas into my playing and into my understanding of how a musical language has been built on the saxophone. You look at the forefathers of, especially in the jazz idiom of language, we know that Charlie Parker is a pivotal point, and we also know that Charlie Parker played a Con 6M for a lot of his career. But we don't often talk about how Charlie Parker's lineage came from mirroring what occurs on a tenor saxophone. There's a wonderful biography on Bird, it's called Bird Lives, and in there the author is talking about how young Charlie Parker would watch Lester Young from up in the banisters in a small club in Kansas City, and would hold a very old French saxophone, like late 1800s, early. So it's still in that original Adolphe sax kind of idea and shape of the keys, and things aren't very developed, engineered on the mechanisms. And Charlie would kind of mimic Lester's hands. And that translated into E flat alto, and its projection, its range made the alto saxophone so incredibly centered in saxophone study moving forward. But like I said, the tenor saxophone this is home for me. I'm a larger guy, and in being so, I've always been, tall for my age, big for my age, however you want to say it, and that's why the tenor saxophone was given to me first. And then I felt even more comfortable in a baritone saxophone. And I think that's probably where this fascination all began, because that baritone was an old, aristocrat, just like this tenor is. And it's always been a part of my identity as a saxophonist. The way the sound is, the bore, the type of resonance that you'll get from the instrument makes me feel just at home. So that's why this tenor saxophone to me is such a joy to play. I've missed playing it terribly, and it feels just great to get in front of the camera and just play a little bit today. So I think I'm going to do a little bit more of that, and then we're going to keep talking from there. And welcome back. So this tenor saxophone is a Series 2 Aristocrat made in 1945, and these Series 2 Aristocrats are known for a couple things, one of them especially being the Big B nickname they've received from having a big B on the engraving on the side of the bell. And these were a choice instrument for a lot of musicians and are probably one of the more common instruments you can find as a vintage American saxophone in the country. I know the global market's a little bit different, but these Aristocrats are known for a really, really warm sound. It's as big as you need it to be. It's as sweet as you need it to be. It's a little bit of everything. And I've been playing on Aristocrats for too many years to count now, because they just kind of fit. I think it's a good match between the two of us. And you know, the next couple of videos we're gonna dive into the Aristocrats a little bit more, because I think they really, really warrant discussion, especially after the heavy talks we've been doing about the Con 6M. In Elkhart, we had the two main competitors working against each other, but not really against each other, as we've come to find out that these manufacturers were, you know, everyone would lean on each other to keep the saxophone moving forward and keep the band instrument industry moving forward. And I think there's a lot to be said about that, especially in the ways that different employees would go from manufacturer to manufacturer. An elkhart saxophone is the product of generations of, you know, skilled craftsmanship that turned into something so exciting. This was an entire, actually multiple generations of people that honed in their craft. And you know, that's why every single one of these saxophones is so unique, because it could have been a first generation saxophone builder or a, you know, third generation saxophone builder, and they've been working in all the different realms, and they understand the different, you know, dimensions and feels behind the companies they're working for. There's a lot that just builds into what it means to have a vintage elkhart saxophone. And you know, I like to think there's a lot of things that's special with this saxophone, because it's not just the way that I found it, but also this is one of the very, very first ones that was made after the wartime restrictions were lifted. So everyone's excited to be making instruments again, and there's just a lot of joy in this particular instrument. Like the revamped, you know, 6M Con Alto, and the rest of their series, the buescher lineup got its overhaul in the early 30s as well. It came after a series of horns known as the New Aristocrats, which were the transitional models from the company, moving from their true tone line of the early 1900s into their further professional setup. The New Aristocrat horns are very, very well sought out for, often by classical musicians. Sigurd Rascher played a New Aristocrat for pretty much his entire career, and he was a very, very big proponent of these instruments for many, many reasons, but we'll dive into that on a different video, probably more about him specifically. However, the Aristocrats came about officially in the kind of 1933, 1934 model years, and this is when, just like Con, they dropped the soprano from production for a while, and focused on an alto, a tenor, and a baritone. And this was known as the first Series 1 Aristocrat saxophone. And it had, you know, some pretty cool, exciting features, notably a new design on the pinky cluster. It had some kind of tweaks to the octave mechanism to make it just streamlined, a little bit quicker, a little more reliable. The true tone saxophones in their later years, then also the Aristocrats, featured the two main kind of patented pieces to the buescher lineup, and that is the snap-on pad and the Norton screws. The Norton springs on these instruments were designed to kind of move away from the traditional blue steel pin spring, and had a threaded screw developed by Charles Norton, and there's a patent out there, and it's really cool. You can go find it. I forgot what the number is, so that's why it's not on the top of my head. But the concept is they're gold plated. They're gonna hold their tension for years, and rather than just kind of tightening them by bending the rod, you can replace the spring if need be. It's just a different structural integral design to the spring itself. And as you can see on this all original example from the 40s, springs are still working great, and they have tons of life in them. Everything is nice and quick and snappy, and you know, it's it makes sense why their slogans were, you know, no gimmicks, just go for the tone. If you wanted to sound great, you played an Aristocrat, you played a buescher or a true tone, because it's all about the sound you make at the end of the day. You know, you can have a lot of different features or, you know, add-ons to a saxophone, but it's just you and your notes when it all comes down to it. And I think that calls for a few more notes, as I just want to keep playing and keep playing and keep playing. So we're going to do that, and then it's possible we're going to sign off pretty quickly after that, because I want to go practice for a couple of hours. And if you have an Aristocrat, I hope you join in the comment section for this and talk about your own saxophone, because I think saxocology is an incredible idea that's best shared with a whole bunch of people. And when we all build our story together, then we know what's happening in the world. And we'll go on to some more points soon. As I was just playing, it brought me back to a thought that I had at the beginning of this video with the pedagogical aspects of a tenor saxophone. For many of you out there, you might have started on a tenor, you might have started on an alto, you might have started on a baritone, and you know, if you start on a tenor saxophone, I'm thinking from my experience, a lot of your air concepts are going to be moving kind of in a straight motion, and then also there's a large dip. You have a farther distance in your horn that you're kind of visualizing through as you play. And I think there's something to be said for the gooseneck in the way that you teach voicing and air and articulation, because your airstream moves in a couple different directions as it produces a sound. You know, you start the sound with the mouthpiece and the reed, and the air, especially on an older American saxophone, has a lower angle, so it has to travel higher and further, rather than kind of in the modern style saxophone, the neck's up quite at a higher angle, so you're working kind of in a downward motion like you do with an alto saxophone. These horns really enjoy being played the way they are. And as you'll see kind of historically in photos, you had bigger guys playing tenors back in the day. You know, Dexter Gordon, my size, played a con 10M. But there's a position that you'll see these older saxophones being held in that I think says a lot to the nature of the sound it's going to create. And that's this kind of broad stance, a little bit foot forward planted. But the tenor saxophone in common literature, concert literature, is not quite the same for what it is in more of the jazz practice. And you know, that's okay, because there are parts to the alto saxophone that you could study for your entire life, that you wouldn't have to necessarily spend a similar amount of time on say, a tenor saxophone. Just because of the way the air travels and the way that the intonation has different tendencies to hang in or be around. You know, I love the tenor saxophone. B flat is a wonderful key, and I think that there are some incredible things that have been discovered already in the B flat saxophone realm with, you know, masters of the instrument like Coltrane and Brecker. However, there's a lot of really, really unsung heroes on these instruments, and I'm thinking about, you know, guys like Buddy Tate, Ike Quebec, just these really, really sound-focused instrumentalists that might not have had the speed that we like to work towards in an academic setting, or the, you know, power forward approach to straight ahead playing, but they were part of the creation and development of the sound that we love that comes from these instruments. And, you know, that's all part of the discussion, and I think we'll get to some unsung heroes pretty soon. But today I think I'm gonna sign off with a little closing, and I'll see you guys in the next video. We're gonna keep playing around with some aristocrats for a little bit. I think that's really where I want to go next. And thanks for being here. Please subscribe, share, comment. And if you have wonderful saxophone stories, share them along. That's what this whole idea around the story is about. So thanks for being here, and I will see you guys soon, and have a great day.